The credit card statement arrived on a Tuesday, and that's when I knew my wife was draining our accounts for someone else. I'm Harrison Quill, 42 years old, attorney for a mid-sized firm in Hartford, Connecticut. I specialize in asset protection and forensic accounting for divorce cases, which makes what happened next almost poetic. For the past 8 months, I'd watched my wife Vivienne transform from merely cold and materialistic into something else entirely. Someone distracted. Someone who smiled at her phone in ways she hadn't smiled at me in years. That Tuesday morning, she swept into my home office wearing a cream-colored cashmere robe that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe style she favored, the one that made her look like she was perpetually judging everyone around her, which, to be fair, she usually was. "Harrison, darling, I need a favor," she said, not looking up from her phone. I'd learned to recognize that tone. It meant she'd already decided on something and was merely informing me as a courtesy. "What kind of favor?" I asked, reviewing the credit card statement on my screen. 2 charges at the Regency Hotel downtown, each over $400, both on dates she'd claimed to be at book club. "There's a new spa that opened in West Hartford, Serenity Heights. They do this incredible full-day treatment package. Hot stone massage, aromatherapy, facial treatments, the works. It's only $1,000. "Only?" I repeated. She finally looked at me, her blue eyes cool and assessing. "Yes, Harrison, only. Some of us actually take care of ourselves." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Vivienne Marlowe Quill, late 30s, though she'd murder anyone who mentioned it. Former marketing consultant who'd quit working the moment we got married 6 years ago. Now her full-time occupation seemed to be spending my money and maintaining her image among Hartford's social scene. "The answer is no," I said. Her expression shifted from confident to irritated in half a second. "Excuse me?" "We discussed the budget last month. You agreed to keep discretionary spending under control. $1,000 spa day isn't in the budget." "This is ridiculous. You make a perfectly good salary. We can afford—" "Can we?" I turned my monitor toward her, showing the credit card statement. "Can you explain these hotel charges?" She barely glanced at them. "Those are from the networking events I told you about. Some of us are working on building professional connections, Harrison, even if we're not currently employed." "Networking events that require hotel rooms?" "The conferences ran late. I've explained this to you before. Are you going to interrogate me every time I try to invest in my career development?" It was impressive, really, the way she could flip any conversation into an attack on my character. Classic deflection. I'd seen it 100 times in depositions. "The answer on the spa is still no," I said. She stared at me for a long moment, then smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Fine. I'll figure it out myself." She left, and I heard her on the phone in the next room within seconds. Her voice was different when she thought I couldn't hear. Softer, warmer, almost girlish. I pulled up our joint checking account. She'd transferred $1,500 to her personal account 3 hours ago. So much for asking permission. I spent the next 2 hours doing what I do best, following the money. Our accounts showed a pattern I'd been too preoccupied to notice until recently. Regular transfers to her personal account, always just under $2,000. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to, more hotel bookings, and then I found it. A charge from a travel agency dated 2 days ago, $2,300. The description just said, "Premium Booking Services." I called the agency, using the voice I reserved for when I needed information quickly. Professional, busy, slightly annoyed. "This is Harrison Quill. My wife Vivienne made a booking with you recently, and I need to verify the details for insurance purposes." The agent was happy to help. Honeymoon package to Bermuda, 2 tickets. Departing in 3 weeks, resort accommodations for 6 days. "And the names on the booking?" I asked, though I already knew. "Vivienne Marlowe and Dashiell Renner." I thanked her and hung up. Dashiell Renner. Dash. I knew that name. Vivienne's college boyfriend, the one she'd mentioned exactly twice in 6 years of marriage, both times with a dismissive laugh about how immature they'd been. According to her LinkedIn profile, which I'd never bothered to check until that moment, he was now a commercial real estate developer in Hartford. Successful, judging by his company's website. Arrogant, judging by his profile photo. And apparently, still in touch with my wife. I sat there for a while, thinking through my options. I could confront her immediately, but that would show my hand. I could file for divorce right now, but Connecticut was a no-fault state, unless I could prove adultery or financial misconduct, which meant I needed more evidence. Or I could do what I'd advised dozens of clients to do, document everything, build an airtight case, and strike when the timing gave me maximum advantage. The attorney in me knew the smart play. But there was another part of me, the part that had been slowly suffocating under 6 years of emotional neglect and condescension, that wanted something more than just a clean divorce settlement. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to lose everything. Vivienne returned home at 8 that evening. I heard the car in the driveway, then nothing for several minutes. When she finally came through the door, I understood why. She looked like she'd been in a war. Her hair, normally perfect, hung in wet, stringy clumps around her face. Her white designer outfit, which I recognized as new, probably purchased that morning, was stained with something brown and oily. Mud, maybe? Or clay? Her makeup had run in dark streaks down her cheeks, and she was limping slightly. "Don't," she said when I opened my mouth. "Don't say a word." I held up my hands. I wasn't going to say anything. They said the mud wrap was detoxifying. They didn't mention the mud was basically boiling. Then the massage therapist pulled something in my back during the hot stone treatment. And the aromatherapy... She shuddered. Apparently, I'm violently allergic to eucalyptus oil. My throat started closing up. They had to call an ambulance. "Are you okay?" "Obviously not, Harrison. Do I look okay?" She kicked off her ruined shoes. The worst part is that Cecily Bramwell was there. Of course she was. She saw the whole thing. By tomorrow, everyone in our circle will know that I had an allergic reaction and vomited in the relaxation lounge. Cecily Bramwell. Vivienne's closest friend and possibly the biggest gossip in Hartford's social scene. If Cecily had witnessed the spa disaster, then yes, everyone would know by morning. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. Whatever else was happening, I didn't enjoy seeing anyone have an allergic reaction. "I need to shower. This mud is starting to harden." She disappeared upstairs, and I heard the water running for the next 40 minutes. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel, she looked marginally more human. "I'm ordering dinner," she called down. "I assume you haven't eaten." "Not yet." "Thai food?" "Sure." It was almost normal, almost like we were a regular couple having a regular evening. Except I knew about the hotel charges and the flight booking and Dashiell Renner. And she had no idea I knew. I spent dinner watching her, really watching her. She kept checking her phone between bites of pad thai, smiling at messages she didn't share. When she thought I wasn't looking, her expression would soften into something almost vulnerable, excited, the way someone looks when they're anticipating something wonderful. "Big day tomorrow?" I asked. She looked up, guarded again. "Meetings." "What kind of meetings?" "Just coffee with some contacts. Why?" "Just curious about your schedule." She studied me for a moment, suspicious. "Since when do you care about my schedule?" "Since always. I'm your husband." "Right." She went back to her phone. "Well, I have coffee at 10, lunch at 1, and then I'm meeting Cecily for drinks in the evening, provided she doesn't spend the whole time mocking me about today." "She's your friend. I'm sure she'll be supportive." Vivienne laughed. It was a sharp, bitter sound. "You don't know Cecily. She's already texted me 3 times with concern about my ordeal. By drinks tomorrow, she'll have told at least a dozen people." After dinner, she retreated to the bedroom while I stayed in my office. I pulled up the bank account again and found another transfer. $800, moved to her personal account an hour ago. Emergency spa fund, apparently. Then I did something I'd never done before. I installed monitoring software on our home Wi-Fi network. It was legal, I owned the network, and Connecticut's wiretapping laws had specific exemptions for network security. Within 20 minutes, I could see every device connected to our network and every unencrypted message passing through it. Vivienne's phone was the second device on the list. Most of her messages were encrypted through various apps, but her regular texts came through clearly enough, and there were a lot of them to a contact saved only as Dr. Dashiell Renner. I couldn't see the messages themselves, they were using some encrypted messaging app, but I could see the frequency. Dozens of messages every day, photos being shared back and forth. Video calls lasting an hour or more, always when I was at work. The final message of the night came through at 11:30. "Good night," it said. "Can't wait for our trip, just 3 more weeks." I sat in the dark of my office, listening to Vivienne getting ready for bed in the room above me, and made my decision. 3 weeks. That gave me plenty of time to prepare. The next morning, I called in a favor from an old law school friend who now ran a private investigation firm. Jake Patterson owed me from a case I'd referred him 3 years ago that had paid for his kids' college tuition. "I need surveillance," I told him, over coffee at a diner halfway between our offices. "My wife and her boyfriend. I need photos, documentation, everything that would hold up in court." Jake nodded slowly. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 8 months, maybe longer. They're planning a trip to Bermuda in 3 weeks. "You want me to document that too?" "No, I want this wrapped up before they get on that plane." He pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. "What's the boyfriend's name?" "Dashiell Renner. Goes by Dash. He runs a commercial real estate development company downtown. Drives a black BMW license plate." I pulled out my phone, showing him the registration information I'd pulled from the DMV database that morning. "This one." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You've been busy." "I'm motivated." "What's your end goal here? Just divorce evidence? Or are you thinking bigger?" "I want everything. Financial records, proof of the affair, documentation of every penny she's spent on him. I want her to walk away from this marriage with nothing. Connecticut's a no-fault state. Unless you can prove she's been hiding assets or committing fraud." "That's exactly what I'm going to prove. She's been transferring money to her personal accounts, charging everything to our joint cards. The Bermuda trip alone is over $5,000 when you factor in the resort she booked. All marital assets." Jake whistled. "Okay, I can work with that. Give me a week for initial surveillance, 2 weeks for comprehensive documentation. You've got 10 days. After that, I'm moving forward whether we have everything or not." We shook hands, and I spent the rest of the day at the office handling actual casework. It felt surreal, processing someone else's divorce papers while planning my own. The client, a nervous man in his 50s, kept asking if his wife could take his business. "Did you commingle funds?" I asked. "I don't know what that means." "Did you use business money for personal expenses? Did your wife work at the business? Did you put marital assets into the business account?" "Well, yes. Sometimes. It was easier to just..." "Then yes. She can make a claim on the business. How much easier did that feel now?" He looked miserable. "What should I do?" "You should have called me 6 months ago before she hired a lawyer and froze your accounts. Now we're playing defense." I spent the next 3 hours salvaging what I could of his case, but my mind kept drifting to Vivienne and Dash. Were they together right now? Were they laughing about how clueless I was? Planning their future while spending my money? That evening, I decided to do some surveillance of my own. Vivienne had mentioned drinks with Cecily at 6. I left work early, grabbed a sandwich, and parked across the street from Cecily's favorite wine bar in West Hartford. Sure enough, at 6:15, Vivienne's white Mercedes pulled up. She was alone. She went inside, and I waited. At 6:30, a black BMW pulled into the parking lot. Dashiell Renner stepped out, and I got my first real look at the man my wife was leaving me for. He was tall, well-dressed, in that casual, expensive way that screamed money. Dark hair, confident walk, the kind of smile that probably worked on every woman he met. He checked his phone, looked around the parking lot. I slumped lower in my seat, then headed inside. So much for drinks with Cecily. I waited another 20 minutes, then followed them inside. The bar was dim and crowded enough that I could sit at the far end without being noticed. Vivienne and Dash were in a corner booth, leaning close, their hands intertwined on the table. I ordered a beer and watched. They looked happy. That was the worst part. Vivienne was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years, her face lit up with genuine pleasure. Dash was laughing at something she said, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. It was intimate, comfortable, like they'd been doing this for a long time. My phone buzzed. Jake Patterson. Already got something interesting. His text read, "Your boy Dash has a history. 2 ex-wives both divorced him for infidelity. Want me to dig deeper?" "Yes," I typed back. "Everything you can find." I took a photo of Vivienne and Dash from across the bar, making sure the image clearly showed them holding hands. Then I finished my beer and left before they could notice me. That night, Vivienne came home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. "How was Cecily?" I asked from the couch. Exhausting as always. She spent an hour complaining about her husband's golf obsession. "That sounds terrible." It was. She kicked off her shoes. "I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late." "I won't." I waited until I heard her bedroom door close. We'd been sleeping in separate rooms for 4 months, another red flag I'd ignored, then opened my laptop. Time to start phase 2. Over the next week, I implemented what I called minor inconveniences. Nothing illegal, nothing traceable, just small disruptions designed to create stress and paranoia. Dash's BMW got a flat tire in the parking garage at his office. Just one tire, the valve stem mysteriously loosened. Not my doing, of course. I was in court all morning, but I happened to hear about it from Jake's surveillance team. The next day, Vivienne's hair appointment got mysteriously canceled. The salon apologized profusely. Their computer system had glitched. She had to reschedule for 2 weeks out, which meant she'd have Roots showing at the charity gala this weekend. Dash's dry cleaning went missing. The owner was very sorry, couldn't explain how it happened, offered to pay for the lost items. Vivienne's favorite restaurant suddenly couldn't find their reservation for Friday night. The hostess was apologetic, but firm. No table available, fully booked. By themselves, these were just normal annoyances, life's little frustrations. But happening in sequence, they created an atmosphere of things going wrong. Murphy's Law in action. And I was just getting started. Jake called me on day 8 with his preliminary report. "You're going to want to see this in person," he said. We met at his office, a nondescript building in an industrial park. He led me to a conference room where he'd laid out printed photos and documents. "Your wife and Dash have been meeting regularly for 9 months, he started, usually at the Regency Hotel, sometimes at his condo downtown. They're not subtle about it, kissing in parking lots, holding hands in restaurants. Here's the timeline." He walked me through it. The affair had started last January at an alumni networking event. They'd reconnected, started texting, and within a month were meeting weekly. By March, it was twice a week. Now it was nearly daily. "Financial records?" I asked. "That's where it gets interesting. Your wife has been transferring money to a separate account at Hartford National. She's moved over $40,000 in the past 6 months. I felt my stomach drop. 40,000? Most of it in increments small enough not to trigger automatic alerts. 1,500 here, 2,000 there. She's also been charging everything to your joint credit cards, hotels, restaurants, even gifts. I found receipts for a Rolex she bought Dash last month, $3,000. Jesus. There's more. The Bermuda trip? She upgraded to the premium suite. The original booking was $2,300. She called back and paid another $1,500 for an ocean view suite with a private pool. I looked at the photos spread across the table. Vivienne and Dash at restaurants, entering the hotel, kissing in his car. In one photo, she was wearing a necklace I'd never seen before. In another, they were laughing together, looking carefree and young. "What about Dash?" I asked. "What's his financial situation?" Jake pulled out another folder. "That's the really interesting part. Dashiell Renner is leveraged to hell and back. His company is drowning in debt. He's got 3 properties in foreclosure, a failed development project in Manchester that's being sued by investors, and personal credit card debt over $100,000. On paper, he looks successful, but he's basically insolvent. So he's using my wife's money, my money, to stay afloat. Looks that way. Some of those transfers from your wife's account? They match up with payments on his personal credit cards. She's been funding his lifestyle." I sat down, processing this. It was worse than I'd thought. Not just an affair, but financial fraud. Vivienne wasn't just cheating, she was systematically draining our assets to support her boyfriend's failing business. "This is enough for divorce court," Jake said. "Easy win for you on the financial side. She's violated her fiduciary duty as a spouse, misappropriated marital assets, committed fraud. Judge will hammer her." "Good. What else do you have?" "Text messages, though most are encrypted. Call records showing hundreds of contacts. Video of them entering and leaving hotels. Witness statements from hotel staff. And this." He slid a final document across the table. "Dash made a reservation at Toscana for tomorrow night, 8 p.m., anniversary dinner apparently. 1 year since they reconnected." I picked up the reservation confirmation. "How did you get this?" "Restaurant manager owed me a favor. Dash specifically requested the private room upstairs. Very romantic." An idea formed. "Can you get me into that restaurant tomorrow night?" "Sure, but not as a customer. I want to be there, in that private room, before they arrive." Jake looked at me for a long moment. "What are you planning?" "Nothing illegal. I just want to have a conversation with my wife and her boyfriend. All 3 of us together, no secrets." "Harrison, that's not smart. You should let the evidence speak in court." "I will. But first, I want them to know that I know. I want to see their faces." Jake sighed. "This is a bad idea." "Probably. Can you arrange it?" Yeah, I can arrange it. But if this goes south, I was never involved. Understood?" "Understood." That night, I started the final phase of minor sabotages. Nothing traceable to me, all coordinated through Jake's contacts. Dash's car got towed from his office parking lot. "Parking violation," the sign said. It cost him $200 and 3 hours to retrieve it. Vivienne's credit card got flagged for suspicious activity. Nothing wrong with it, just a security hold that required her to spend an hour on the phone with the fraud department. The hotel where they usually met had a water main break. Closed for repairs, no rooms available for the next week. These weren't accidents. These were messages. Things are falling apart. Your perfect little secret world is starting to crumble. And tomorrow night at Toscana, the message would become explicit. Tomorrow night, they'd learn I knew everything. I changed my plans. The restaurant confrontation felt too small, too controlled. I wanted chaos. I wanted them to feel hunted, exposed, panicked. And I wanted it to happen somewhere they couldn't escape easily, somewhere public enough that they'd have to maintain composure while everything fell apart around them. I wanted it to happen at the airport. Jake called me that afternoon. Change of plans on my end, too. My guy at the airline sent me the passenger manifest. They've got tickets for today. Not in 3 weeks, today. Bradley International departing at 6:15 p.m. They moved up the trip? Looks like it. Dash bought new tickets this morning. Premium economy, direct flight to Bermuda. They're leaving tonight. I checked the time. 2:30 p.m. That gave me less than 4 hours. What about their luggage? Already checked in. They used mobile check-in this morning. Dash's assistant dropped off the bags at noon. So they were planning to slip away quietly, leaving tonight instead of waiting. Maybe Dash sensed something was wrong. Maybe Vivienne was getting paranoid. Or maybe they just couldn't wait 3 more weeks. Either way, I had work to do. "Can you get someone to the airport?" I asked Jake. "I need eyes on them from the moment they arrive." "Already on it. My guy will be there in 20 minutes. "Good. Tell him to stay close but not too close. I don't want them spotting surveillance." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to be there too." I left work early, telling my assistant I had a family emergency. Not exactly a lie. At home, I packed a small bag with everything I'd need. Printed photos from Jake's surveillance, copies of the bank statements showing the transfers, the hotel receipts, and the original flight itinerary for the trip that was supposed to be in 3 weeks. Then I added one more thing. A thick envelope containing divorce papers I'd prepared 2 days ago. Pre-signed, dated, ready to file. All they needed was delivery. I drove to Bradley International and parked in short-term parking. Jake's guy, a bored-looking man in his 30s wearing a Red Sox cap, nodded to me from near the departure drop-off. "They're not here yet," he said. Dash texted his assistant 20 minutes ago saying they were running late. Traffic. Probably nerves. My guess is your wife is second-guessing the early departure. We waited. I bought a coffee I didn't drink and pretended to read a newspaper while watching the entrance. At 4:45, Dash's black BMW pulled up to departures. He got out first, moving quickly to open the passenger door. Vivienne emerged wearing oversized sunglasses and a cream-colored trench coat. They looked nervous, checking over their shoulders as they headed inside. I waited 2 minutes, then followed. Bradley International isn't a large airport, which worked in my favor. There were only 3 security checkpoints, and I could see from the departures board that their gate was B7. I couldn't follow them through security, I didn't have a ticket, but I didn't need to. I approached the airline counter. "I need to purchase a ticket," I told the agent. "Next available flight, any destination." She looked at me oddly. "Any destination?" "Anywhere. I just need to get through security." 10 minutes and $300 later, I had a ticket to Boston departing at 7 p.m. It would get me through security with 90 minutes to spare. Jake's guy texted me, "They're through security, gate B7, boarding starts in 40 minutes. I went through security, gathered my belongings, and headed for the B concourse. Gate B7 was at the far end, a 20-minute walk. I took my time, scanning the crowds for any sign of them. I spotted Vivienne first. She was sitting alone near the gate, scrolling through her phone. No sign of Dash. I texted Jake's guy. "Where's the boyfriend?" "Bathroom. Far end of concourse." Perfect. I walked past Vivienne without looking at her, heading for the men's room at the far end. As I approached, Dash came out, still drying his hands. He looked distracted, worried about something. I timed it perfectly, bumping into him just hard enough to make him drop his phone. "Sorry," I said, bending down to pick it up. "Wasn't watching where I—" He looked at me. Really looked at me. And I saw the exact moment he recognized me from Vivienne's photos. His face went pale. "You," he said. I handed him his phone. "Me, Harrison Quill. I believe you've been spending a lot of time with my wife." He glanced around, looking for escape routes or witnesses. The concourse was crowded, but no one was paying attention to us. "Look, I don't know what Vivienne told you." "She didn't tell me anything. She's been too busy draining our bank accounts to fund your failing business." I kept my voice conversational, friendly even. Just 2 guys chatting at the airport. $40,000 over the past 6 months. That's a lot of money to spend on someone else's boyfriend. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Just like you don't know about the Rolex she bought you, or the hotel rooms she's been paying for, or this trip to Bermuda that she upgraded to a premium suite." I pulled out one of the printed photos, showing him and Vivienne kissing outside the Regency Hotel. "Should I go on?" Dash's hands were shaking. "This is harassment." This is a conversation, a friendly warning, actually. See, I know all about your financial situation. The foreclosures, the failed development, the lawsuit from your investors in Manchester. You're broke, Dash, completely underwater, and you've been using my wife and my money to stay afloat. You can't prove any of that. I don't have to. The bank records prove it. The receipts prove it. The surveillance photos prove it. I stepped closer, dropping my voice. And in about 48 hours, when I file for divorce and motion to freeze all of her accounts, you're going to lose your funding. How long before your creditors come calling? A week? 2? He was sweating now. What do you want? I want you to understand something. This trip you're about to take, this romantic getaway, it's over. The moment you get on that plane, my lawyer files the papers. By the time you land in Bermuda, Vivienne won't have access to a penny of marital funds. The credit cards will be frozen, the joint accounts locked, and you'll be stuck in a foreign country with a woman who has no money and a lot of questions about why her life just imploded. You're insane. I'm thorough. There's a difference. I pulled out the envelope containing the divorce papers. These are for Vivienne. I was going to mail them, but since you're both here, I figured I'd save on postage. Make sure she gets them before you board. I held out the envelope. Dash didn't take it. What if I tell her you're here? He asked. Go ahead. Run back to your gate and tell her I ambushed you in the bathroom. Explain why you're terrified. Try to convince her that everything's fine and you should still get on that plane. I smiled. Or you could be smart, take these papers, and start thinking about how you're going to pay your bills when your sugar mama gets cut off. He grabbed the envelope, his face flushed with anger and fear. This isn't over, he said. You're right. It's just getting started. I walked away, heading back toward gate B7. Behind me, I heard Dash on his phone, his voice rising in panic. Vivienne, we need to talk, right now. Something's happened. I found a seat across from their gate with a clear view of Vivienne. She was still on her phone, oblivious. Then Dash appeared, walking quickly, the envelope in his hand. He sat down next to her and started talking urgently, his hands gesturing. Vivienne's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally fear. She grabbed the envelope, tore it open, and started reading. Even from across the concourse, I could see her hands shaking. She looked up, scanning the crowds, looking for me. I stayed where I was, watching. She said something to Dash, who shook his head vigorously. They argued for a minute, their voices rising enough that other passengers started glancing over. Then Vivienne stood up and walked quickly toward the airline desk at the gate. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see it. She was trying to change their tickets, delay the flight, something. The gate agent was shaking her head. No changes available. The flight was full. Maybe they could rebook for tomorrow? Vivienne came back to Dash, and they argued more intensely. She pointed at the divorce papers. He pointed at his phone. She buried her face in her hands. That's when I stood up and walked directly toward them. Vivienne saw me first. She froze, her eyes wide. "Hello, Vivienne," I said. "Fancy meeting you here." She couldn't speak. Dash stood up, trying to position himself between us, but Vivienne pushed him aside. "Harrison, I can explain." "I'm sure you can, but I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in facts. Fact 1, you've been having an affair for 9 months. Fact 2, you've stolen $40,000 from our joint accounts to fund that affair. Fact 3, you're attempting to flee the state with marital assets while lying about your whereabouts." I pulled out my phone, showing her photos from Jake's surveillance. And fact 4, I've documented all of it. People were definitely watching now. Other passengers, gate agents, even a TSA officer who'd wandered over to see what the commotion was about. "You're insane," Vivienne hissed. "You've been following me?" "I've been protecting my assets. There's a difference." "Those are my accounts too. Marital assets, actually, which you've been systematically draining for personal use. That's called dissipation of assets, and judges don't look kindly on it." Dash grabbed Vivienne's arm. "We should go. Just board the plane. Deal with this later. I laughed. By all means, board the plane, fly to Bermuda, spend a week in that premium suite you upgraded to. Just know that the moment you land, every account will be frozen, every card declined. Hope you packed enough cash. You can't do that, Vivienne said. Already done. I filed the emergency motion this morning. Hearing is Monday, but the temporary restraining order on the accounts goes into effect tonight at midnight. In about... I checked my watch. 3 hours and 20 minutes. Vivienne looked at Dash. Dash looked at his phone. Neither of them seemed to know what to do. Now boarding Flight 427 to Bermuda. All passengers please have your boarding passes ready, the gate agent announced. That's your flight, I said. Better decide quickly. Vivienne sank back into her chair. The divorce papers crumpled in her hand. She looked up at me with something like hatred. I want my things from the house, she said. Already packed. I'll have them shipped wherever you'd like. You planned this, all of it. I responded appropriately to a situation you created. There's a difference. Dash leaned down to whisper something to Vivienne, but she shook her head. No, we're not going. Not like this. Vivienne, we already paid. I don't care. Can't you see what he's doing? He's been planning this for weeks. We walk onto that plane, we lose everything. Final boarding call for Flight 427 to Bermuda. All remaining passengers please board now. The gate agent closed the door. The plane left without them. I picked up my bag. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the restraining order details. Oh, and Vivienne, you might want to get your own attorney. This is going to get ugly. I walked away, leaving them sitting there in the empty gate area, surrounded by their shattered plans. Behind me, I heard Vivienne start to cry. I didn't look back. The emergency hearing happened on Monday morning at 9 a.m. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying 3 folders of documentation. Vivienne showed up 20 minutes late with a court-appointed attorney who looked like he'd just graduated law school. Judge Patricia Morrison reviewed the temporary restraining order request while we waited. She was in her 60s, known for being tough, but fair. I'd appeared before her twice before on other cases. Mr. Quill, she said finally, you're requesting a freeze on all joint accounts, credit cards, and access to marital assets pending divorce proceedings. That's an aggressive move. Your Honor, the evidence shows systematic dissipation of marital assets over a 9-month period. My wife has transferred over $40,000 to personal accounts, made substantial purchases for her boyfriend, and was attempting to leave the state when I intervened. I have bank records, receipts, and photographic evidence. Ms. Marlowe, the judge turned to Vivienne, do you dispute these allegations? Vivienne's lawyer started to speak, but she cut him off. Some of that money was for legitimate expenses, such as networking events, professional development, personal care. $3,000 watches? I interjected. Hotel rooms, vacation packages. The judge held up her hand. Mr. Quill, you'll have your turn. Ms. Marlowe, did you purchase gifts for someone other than your husband using marital funds? Vivienne hesitated. I may have. Did you book a vacation for 2 people using marital funds without your husband's knowledge or consent? We were having marital difficulties. I needed space to think. That's not an answer to my question. Vivienne's lawyer leaned over and whispered something. She nodded reluctantly. Yes, Your Honor. I booked a trip with a friend. A male friend with whom you were having a romantic relationship? Silence. Your Honor, I said, sliding a folder across to the bailiff. I have documented evidence of an affair spanning 9 months, including hotel receipts, surveillance photographs, and financial records showing my wife systematically funding her boyfriend's expenses with marital assets. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents for several long minutes. When she looked up, her expression was stern. The temporary restraining order is granted. All joint accounts are frozen pending full financial discovery. Ms. Marlowe, you're entitled to access personal necessities, but all discretionary spending requires court approval. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a full hearing on asset division. Vivienne stood up. Your Honor, I need access to funds for basic living expenses. You'll receive a monthly allowance through the court. Mr. Quill will submit a reasonable budget by end of business today. This is insane. He's trying to control me. He's protecting marital assets that you, by your own admission, have been misusing. The order stands. Court adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Vivienne cornered me. You're enjoying this. I'm protecting what's mine. Half of everything is mine, too. Then you should have thought about that before you spent it on your boyfriend. I started walking toward my car. She followed. I want the house. The house is in my name. You'll get your share of the equity in the settlement. Where am I supposed to live? That's not my problem, Vivienne. You have family, you have friends, figure it out. Cecily said I could stay with her, but I need money for what? More spa days? More gifts for Dash? I turned to face her. You have an allowance now. $1,000 a month for necessities. Anything more requires a receipt and court approval. Her face flushed red. 1,000? That's nothing. That's more than most people live on. Make it work. I got in my car and drove away, watching her in the rearview mirror. She was on her phone within seconds, probably calling Dash or Cecily or her mother, trying to find someone who'd feel sorry for her. Good luck with that. That afternoon, I started Phase 3. Strategic social exposure. Hartford's upper-middle-class social scene ran on gossip and reputation. Vivienne had spent 6 years carefully cultivating her image as the perfect wife, sophisticated, charitable, well-connected. She sat on the board of 2 local charities, organized fundraisers, and hosted book club meetings at our house. All of that was built on the illusion that our marriage was solid and our finances were stable. Time to shatter that illusion. I started with Cecily Bramwell. Not directly, that would be too obvious. Instead, I had Jake's team accidentally leave a folder at her favorite coffee shop. The folder contained copies of the hotel receipts and a few carefully selected surveillance photos. Nothing explicit, but enough to make it clear what was happening. Cecily found the folder. I know because Jake's guy watched her open it, saw her eyes go wide, and then saw her immediately pull out her phone and start texting. Within 3 hours, 6 people in Vivienne's social circle had received vague but concerned messages from Cecily about something troubling she'd discovered. By evening, the gossip had spread to at least 20 people. The next morning, Vivienne called me. What did you do? I have no idea what you're talking about. Everyone is talking about us. Cecily called me this morning asking if we were having difficulties. Karen from the charity board wanted to know if I was going through something. Someone even asked if I needed financial assistance. Sounds like people are concerned about you. They're gossiping. Someone told them about the affair. I certainly didn't. Maybe Dash mentioned it to someone. Maybe the hotel staff noticed something. These things have a way of getting out. This is your fault. My fault that you had an affair. My fault that you spent $40,000 of our money on your boyfriend. My fault that people are noticing. She hung up on me. That weekend, there was a charity gala at the Hartford Country Club. Vivienne had been on the planning committee for 6 months. She'd been looking forward to it, had bought a new dress, had planned to make a big impression. I made sure to attend too. I arrived alone, dressed well, playing the role of the dignified husband dealing with a difficult situation. People approached me cautiously, offering sympathetic looks and carefully worded questions about how I was holding up. It's been a challenging time, I said, keeping my tone neutral and slightly sad. But I'm managing. Thank you for asking. Vivienne arrived 30 minutes after me, also alone. She'd clearly spent time on her appearance. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than her new monthly allowance. She was trying to project confidence, but people noticed the way she scanned the room nervously. They noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. They noticed Dash wasn't with her, and they definitely noticed when she tried to use a credit card at the bar and it was declined. "I'm so sorry," the bartender said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "This card isn't going through. Do you have another one?" Vivienne's face went white. She tried 2 more cards. Both declined. "I'll just pay cash," she muttered, digging through her purse. She didn't have enough. "Allow me," said Gerald Pemberton, one of the charity board members. He paid for her drink with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Vivienne took her wine and retreated to a corner table, her cheeks burning. I watched from across the room, making polite conversation with other guests, letting the scene speak for itself. Later, during the speeches, the charity director thanked the planning committee, including Vivienne. The applause was polite, but noticeably lukewarm. People whispered to each other. Eyes darted between Vivienne and me. After the gala, Cecily cornered me near the coat check. "Harrison, I need to ask you something." "Of course." "Is it true that Vivienne has been seeing someone else?" I considered my options. I could deny it, play ignorant, but that would waste the momentum. Or I could confirm it carefully, letting the truth do the work. "I can't discuss details of our marriage, Cecily. I'm sure you understand. But people say a lot of things. What I can tell you is that we're going through a difficult divorce, and I'm trying to handle it with as much dignity as possible. That's all I'm comfortable sharing." Cecily nodded slowly. "I've known Vivienne for 10 years. I never thought she'd—" "Neither did I." She patted my arm. "If you need anything, please let me know. And Harrison? I'm sorry, I really am." That conversation, I knew, would be repeated to at least a dozen people by morning. Each retelling would add details, speculation, assumptions. By the end of the week, everyone in their social circle would know the broad strokes of what had happened. Vivienne was becoming radioactive. Meanwhile, I'd been working on Dash. Jake had discovered that Dash's business partner, Gregory Chen, was getting nervous about the company's finances. The Manchester development had attracted a lawsuit from investors claiming fraud and misrepresentation. The case was weak, but it was public record, and it was making potential investors nervous. I had Jake's team drop a few anonymous tips to local business reporters. Nothing actionable, just questions about the lawsuit, the foreclosures, the failed projects. Within a week, 2 articles appeared in the Hartford Business Journal questioning the stability of Dash's company. The articles didn't mention Vivienne or our divorce, but they didn't need to. The implied connection was clear. Troubled businessman involved with married woman currently in messy divorce. The kind of scandal that made investors nervous. On Thursday, Dash's biggest investor pulled out of a pending deal, citing concerns about management stability. The deal had been worth $3 million. Without it, Dash's company was effectively insolvent. I know because Gregory Chen called me. We'd met twice at industry events, and he knew I practiced divorce law. "Harrison, I need advice," he said. "My business partner has been acting erratic, and I think it might be related to personal issues. Do I have legal options to protect my interests?" I couldn't represent him, conflict of interest, but I gave him the name of a lawyer who specialized in business dissolutions. "Call him today. Don't wait." "This is about the divorce, isn't it? Dash and your wife?" "I can't comment on that." "Right, of course. Listen, for what it's worth, I'm sorry you're going through this. Dash has always been impulsive, but I never thought he'd do something this stupid." After he hung up, I allowed myself a small smile. The pieces were falling into place. That weekend, Vivienne tried to withdraw money from an ATM and discovered her personal account had been frozen too. Not by me, by the bank, responding to suspicious activity reports triggered by the large transfers she'd made over the past months. She called me in a panic. "They froze my account. I can't access any money." "Contact the bank. It's probably a security hold." "They said it's under investigation for potential fraud." "Then you should probably hire a lawyer." "With what money, Harrison? You've cut me off from everything." I've given you a monthly allowance as ordered by the court. If that's not enough, get a job. A job? I haven't worked in 6 years. Then now's a good time to start. She hung up on me again. I was starting to enjoy these calls. By the end of the second week, Vivienne's situation had deteriorated significantly. She was staying with Cecily, who was being supportive, but clearly getting tired of hosting her. Her credit cards remained frozen. Her social standing had collapsed. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unreturned. The charity board quietly asked her to step down. And Dash had stopped answering her calls. I know because Jake's surveillance team watched her calling him repeatedly outside Cecily's house, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. They watched Dash ignore everyone. When his company officially filed for bankruptcy protection, he apparently decided Vivienne was more liability than asset. On Friday evening, 2 weeks after the airport confrontation, Vivienne showed up at the house. Our house. The one she'd left. I opened the door to find her standing there, without makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater I'd never seen before. She looked exhausted. "I need to get some things," she said. "You should have called first." "Would you have let me in?" "No. That's why I didn't call." She pushed past me into the house. "I'll be quick." I followed her upstairs, watching as she grabbed clothes from the closet, toiletries from the bathroom, jewelry from her dresser. "How's Cecily's place?" I asked. "Fine." "And Dash, how's he doing?" She froze, her back to me. "I wouldn't know." "Really? I heard his company filed for bankruptcy. Tough break." "You did that. You ruined him." "I didn't do anything except protect my assets. If Dash's business collapsed, that's because it was already failing. You were just propping it up with my money." She turned around, tears in her eyes. "Why are you doing this? We could have handled this like adults. We could have had a quiet divorce, split everything fairly. You lost the right to a fair split when you stole $40,000. It wasn't stealing, it was marital money that you used for an affair. That's dissipation of assets, and it's going to cost you." She threw a shoe at me. I dodged it easily. "I hate you," she said. "I don't care." She grabbed her things and left. I heard her car screech out of the driveway. I went back to my office and opened my laptop. Jake had sent me the final surveillance report, a comprehensive document detailing every meeting, every transaction, every piece of evidence we'd gathered over the past 3 weeks. It was devastating, airtight, undeniable. I attached it to an email to my divorce attorney with a simple message: "File for final hearing. Let's end this." The final hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out, but Vivienne's lawyer requested an emergency meeting 2 days later. We met in a conference room at my attorney's office. Neutral ground. Vivienne looked worse than she had at the house. Dark circles under her eyes, clothes that looked slept in, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Her lawyer, a more experienced attorney named Patricia Moss, who she'd somehow scraped together money to hire, laid out their position. "My client is willing to accept a reduced settlement in exchange for expedited proceedings and sealed records." My attorney, Daniel Friedman, didn't even look up from his notes. Define reduced. 30% of marital assets, no spousal support, no claim on the house or retirement accounts. I almost laughed. We were talking about giving her less than $200,000 from a marriage worth nearly $800,000 in total assets. "Counteroffer," Daniel said. 20%, and she signs an NDA agreeing not to discuss the circumstances of the divorce. "That's ridiculous," Patricia said. "My client is entitled to 50% under Connecticut law. Your client forfeited her entitlement when she dissipated marital assets and committed fraud. We have documented evidence of $40,000 in unauthorized transfers, substantial gifts to her boyfriend purchased with marital funds, and attempted flight from the state with marital assets. Any judge will award Mr. Quill substantially more than 50%. Vivienne leaned forward. "Harrison, please. I made mistakes, I know that. But this is my life we're talking about. I have nothing. You have your personal account, I said. Oh wait, that's frozen by the bank for suspicious activity. My mistake. The bank is investigating me because you reported me. I reported fraudulent activity. The bank chose to investigate. That's not on me. Patricia held up her hand. Let's stay focused. Ms. Marlowe is willing to accept responsibility for her actions. She's willing to give up claim to the majority of assets. All she's asking for is enough to start over. She should have thought about that before she spent $40,000 on her boyfriend, Daniel said. Our offer stands. 20%, NDA, and she pays her own legal fees. She can't afford her legal fees. She has no income. Then she should get a job. The hearing is in 3 weeks. If she wants to avoid complete humiliation in open court, she'll accept our terms. Patricia gathered her papers. We need time to consider. You have 48 hours, Daniel said. After that, the offer drops to 15%. After they left, I sat in the conference room with Daniel, reviewing the timeline. They'll accept, he said. Patricia knows her client has no leverage. The evidence is overwhelming. What if they don't? Then we go to court, present everything, and the judge awards you 70 to 80% of marital assets plus spousal support from her if she ever gets income. But that takes months and costs everyone more money in legal fees. I want this done, I said. I want her out of my life. Then hope she's smart enough to accept the deal. That evening, I had Jake's team do one final surveillance run. They reported that Vivienne was still staying with Cecily, but the arrangement was clearly strained. They'd witnessed 2 arguments, both overheard through the open kitchen window. You need to get your life together, Cecily had said. I can't keep supporting you like this. I'm trying. Harrison has frozen everything. Then get a lawyer, file a motion, do something. Sitting around here crying isn't helping anyone. The next day, I decided to take a more direct approach. I'd been avoiding the Regency Hotel, the site of so many of Vivienne's trysts with Dash, but I knew the general manager, Richard Torres, from a legal matter I'd helped him with 2 years ago. He owed me a favor. I called him and asked to meet for coffee. Harrison, good to see you, he said, shaking my hand. How can I help? I need some information. Discreetly. Of course. My wife has been staying at your hotel regularly over the past 9 months. Room 412, usually. I need to know if there were any incidents, any complaints, anything that might be relevant to my divorce proceedings. Richard frowned. I can't give you guest information without a subpoena. I'm not asking for guest information. I'm asking if there were any problems. Property damage, noise complaints, anything that would be in your incident reports. He thought about it. Let me check the records. He came back 10 minutes later with a printed report. Room 412. 6 incidents over the past 8 months. 3 noise complaints from neighboring rooms, 1 about smoking in a non-smoking room, 1 about damaged property, broken lamp, and 1 about inappropriate behavior in the hallway. Inappropriate how? The report says public intoxication and disturbing other guests. Security had to intervene. Was anyone arrested? No. Just escorted back to their room and warned. I took photos of the reports with my phone. Thank you, Richard. This helps. Harrison, I hope you know I'm sorry about what you're going through. Your wife always seemed nice. People aren't always what they seem. I added the hotel incident reports to our evidence file. They weren't damning by themselves, but they painted a picture of reckless behavior and poor judgment. In front of a judge, they'd reinforce the narrative that Vivienne had been out of control. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Quill, this is Gregory Chen, Dashiell Renner's business partner. We spoke last week. I remember. How can I help you? I wanted to let you know that I've filed dissolution papers. I'm severing my partnership with Dash effective immediately. That was fast. It needed to be. The bankruptcy is bad enough, but I've discovered other things. Unauthorized use of company funds, personal expenses charged to business accounts, falsified investor reports. I'm cooperating with the bankruptcy trustee to untangle everything. Sounds messy. It is, but I wanted you to know because some of those unauthorized expenses, they were payments to your wife's accounts. Dash was using company money to fund his personal life, including his relationship with her. I sat up straighter. How much are we talking about? At least $20,000 over the past 6 months, maybe more once the auditors finish. Can you document that? The bankruptcy trustee already has. It's part of the fraud investigation. This was better than I'd hoped. Not only had Vivienne drained our marital accounts, but Dash had been stealing from his company to give her even more money. If any of that came back to her, she could face criminal charges. Gregory, I appreciate you letting me know. Dash ruined my business and my reputation. If I can help make sure he faces consequences, I'm happy to do it. After we hung up, I immediately called Daniel Friedman. We need to amend our filing, I said. There's potential criminal fraud involved. I explained Gregory's information. Daniel listened carefully. This changes things, he said. If Vivienne received stolen corporate funds, she could be named in the bankruptcy fraud case. That's federal jurisdiction. Will it affect our divorce? It makes her settlement position even weaker. No judge is going to be generous to someone facing potential criminal charges. Good. That afternoon, Patricia Moss called Daniel directly. My client accepts your terms, she said. 20% of marital assets, no spousal support, NDA in place, she pays her own legal fees. Smart decision, Daniel said. We scheduled the final settlement signing for the following Monday, but I wasn't done yet. I'd been planning one final move, something that would drive home the complete collapse of Vivienne's carefully constructed life. Something public, humiliating, and perfectly legal. There was a charity auction that Saturday night, one that Vivienne had helped organize before everything fell apart. She'd worked on it for months, had solicited donations, had planned to attend as one of the event's sponsors. Her name was still in the program. I bought a ticket and made sure to arrive early. The event was at the Wadsworth Atheneum, Hartford's art museum, a beautiful venue that Vivienne had specifically chosen. About 200 people attended, mostly from their social circle. People who knew both of us, who'd heard the gossip, who were curious to see how the scandal played out. Vivienne arrived late, alone, wearing a dress I recognized from 3 years ago. She couldn't afford new clothes anymore. She looked around nervously, spotted me across the room, and froze. I raised my glass to her. She turned away. During the auction, there was a segment where major donors were recognized. Vivienne's name appeared on the screen as one of the planning committee members, and there was a brief, awkward pause before the applause started. It was thin, polite, the kind of applause that said, "We're acknowledging your past contributions, but distancing ourselves from you now." Vivienne sat in the back row, her face flushed. Then came the live auction. Various items up for bid, vacation packages, artwork, dinner with local celebrities. I'd made arrangements for one specific item to be included, a weekend spa package at Serenity Heights, the same spa where Vivienne had had her disastrous allergic reaction. The auctioneer described it enthusiastically. A luxurious weekend of pampering at Hartford's premier spa destination. Opening bid is $500. I raised my paddle. 500. There were murmurs in the crowd. People looked between me and Vivienne. Someone else bid 600. I countered with 800. The bidding went back and forth until it was just me and another bidder at $1,500. 1,800, I said. The other bidder dropped out. The auctioneer looked around hopefully. Going once, going twice. 2,000! Everyone turned. Vivienne was standing, her paddle raised, her face defiant. I smiled and raised my paddle. 2,500. She doesn't have $2,500. Someone whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. Vivienne's arm wavered. She looked around at all the faces watching her, at me standing calmly with my paddle raised, and slowly lowered her arm. "Sold to paddle number 43 for $2,500? I paid for the spa package I had no intention of using, donated it back to the charity, and left before Vivienne could corner me. But the message was sent. I had money, I had power, I had control, and she had nothing. Monday morning, we met at Daniel's office to sign the settlement papers. Vivienne arrived with Patricia Moss, both of them looking resigned. The documents were laid out on the conference table: divorce decree, property settlement agreement, NDA, and releases. "Before we sign," Patricia said, "I need to confirm the terms one more time. My client receives 20% of marital assets, approximately $160,000. No spousal support. She relinquishes all claim to the house, retirement accounts, and future earnings. She pays her own legal fees, and she signs an NDA preventing her from discussing the circumstances of the divorce." "Correct," Daniel said. "And Mr. Quill agrees not to pursue any further legal action related to the dissipated assets? As long as she complies with all terms of the settlement and the NDA. Patricia looked at Vivienne, who nodded weakly. We signed. It took 20 minutes. At the end, Vivienne and I were no longer married. She left without saying a word to me. I should have felt relief, victory, something. Instead, I just felt tired. "It's done," Daniel said. "The decree will be filed this afternoon. You're officially divorced." "Thank you. Harrison, I know this was difficult, but you protected your assets and your future. That's what matters." I nodded and left, but I wasn't done yet. There was still the matter of Dashiell Renner. His company had filed for bankruptcy, Gregory had severed their partnership, and the fraud investigation was ongoing. But Dash himself had escaped relatively unscathed. He'd closed down his office, laid off his staff, and quietly disappeared from the Hartford business scene. I couldn't let that stand. I contacted a reporter at the Hartford Business Journal, someone I'd worked with on previous cases involving business fraud. "I have information about the Renner development bankruptcy," I told her. "Off the record initially, but potentially on the record if you can verify everything independently." We met at a coffee shop. I gave her copies of everything Jake had gathered, the timeline of Dash's financial collapse, the connection to the failed Manchester development, the investor lawsuit, and most importantly, the unauthorized transfer of corporate funds to personal accounts. "This is explosive," she said, flipping through the documents. "But I'll need corroboration. Do you have sources willing to talk?" "Gregory Chen, his former partner. He's already cooperating with the bankruptcy trustee, and I can give you contact information for 3 of the investors who filed the lawsuit." "What about the personal angle? The affair?" "That's not part of the story. This is about business fraud and investor deception. The personal stuff is sealed under an NDA. She nodded. "Understood. Give me 2 weeks to verify everything and get comments." The article appeared 12 days later on the front page of the business section. Renner development collapse linked to fraud allegations. It detailed the bankruptcy, the failed projects, the investor lawsuit, and the discovery of misappropriated corporate funds. It named Dash specifically and quoted Gregory Chen extensively. The article didn't mention me or Vivienne at all. It didn't need to. Anyone in Hartford's business community who read it would make the connections themselves. Dash was finished. Not just his business, but his reputation. He'd never get another investor, never start another company, never rebuild what he'd lost. 2 days after the article published, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I heard Dash's voice. "You destroyed my life," he said. "No, you did that yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. I'm bankrupt. I'm being investigated for fraud. My name is poison in this town. You stole from your investors, from your partner, from your company. You used that stolen money to fund an affair with a married woman. Actions have consequences. This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You have nothing left to threaten me with. No money, no reputation, no leverage. You're done." He hung up. I blocked the number. That evening, I got a surprise visit from Cecily Bramwell. She showed up at my door holding a bottle of wine. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Why are you here?" She walked into the living room and sat down without being invited. I wanted to apologize. For what? For not seeing what Vivienne was doing. For not telling you sooner. I knew something was off, but I thought it was just normal marriage problems. I didn't realize she was... She trailed off. Having an affair and stealing from our accounts? Yes, that. She poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if I wanted any. She's staying at a motel now. Did you know that? I didn't. She can't afford anything better with the settlement money, not once she pays her legal fees. And no one will hire her. She has no recent work experience, no references, nothing. That's not my problem. I know. But Harrison, I need you to understand something. She took a long sip of wine. Vivienne was my friend, is my friend. But what she did to you was wrong. The lying, the stealing, all of it. I've told her that. And I've told everyone else too. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that not everyone supported what she did. Some of us were on your side, even if we didn't say it out loud. I looked at her carefully. What do you want, Cecily? I want you to know that the gossip machine works both ways. If you ever need anything spread around or stopped from spreading, I can help. You're offering to be my spy? I'm offering to be fair. Vivienne made her choices. She has to live with them. But that doesn't mean I have to pretend she was the victim. I considered this. Cecily as an ally was unexpected, but potentially useful. I'll keep that in mind, I said. She finished her wine and stood to leave. For what it's worth, you handled this well, better than most people would have. I'm not sure that's a compliment. It is. She paused at the door. Be careful, Harrison. Vivienne is desperate, and desperate people do unpredictable things. After she left, I thought about her warning. Vivienne was desperate. She'd lost her marriage, her money, her social standing, and her boyfriend. She was living in a motel, working at a retail job she'd taken out of necessity, watching her former life disappear. I should have felt sorry for her. I didn't. 3 weeks later, I received an invitation to the Hartford Business Awards dinner. Vivienne was attending. I took a prominent seat, front table. She arrived alone, looked gaunt, and sat at the cheap seats. She tried to network, mostly failing. During dessert, her name was read for last year's planning committee. Applause softened. She sat quickly, embarrassed. After the program, I positioned near the bar. She tried to slip by, but I caught her eye. Vivienne, how are you? Fine. You? Very well. Life is good. She cracked. What do you want? Haven't you done enough? I protected myself. That's self-preservation, not revenge. You ruined my life. You ruined your own. I just protected mine. She admitted her mistakes, begged for money. I refused. Several witnesses saw everything. 2 days later, Jake called. Vivienne filed a police report claiming harassment. I explained everything legally and with witnesses. The police closed the complaint. A week later, she barged into my office during a client meeting, screaming. Security removed her. I documented everything and prepared a restraining order. At the hearing, the judge signed it immediately. Vivienne sobbed and left. 2 weeks later, she broke into my home with a hidden key, was arrested and charged with trespassing and violating the protective order. I changed all locks. Cecily suggested mandatory counseling. The prosecutor offered a plea deal with probation and therapy. Vivienne accepted. 3 months later, I reviewed all final documents. Vivienne was out of my life. I had won, protected my assets, and survived. Life moved on. I began dating, joined the Bar Association Ethics Committee, and realized accountability, not revenge, was the real victory. I closed the door on the past, finally free.